I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Lammersville Unified School District Governing Board on January 20th, 2021 at 7 p.m. At this point, I will ask our student board member, Sanita Jithendra, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If we could have roll call.
Ann Bonilla.
Present.
Colin Clements.
Here.
Sharon Lampel.
Present.
Stephanie Olson.
Here.
David Pombo.
Here.
Sanita Jithendra.
Here.
Thank you. Roman numeral 3, approval of corrections to the agenda. Are there any corrections or changes?
There are none.
Okay, I'll
Move to
entertain a
approve the
motion.
agenda.
Second.
Okay, and student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes. We'll now move on to recognition, and I'll turn that over to Superintendent Nicholas.
Yes, it's my pleasure to, we're celebrating School Board Recognition Month, so congratulations to our trustees and student trustee. A press release was sent to the Mountain House Matters periodical for publication, and a couple of highlights from the press release read as follows. The board sets the foundation and vision for the district, directs resources where they are needed most, ensures accountability to the community by monitoring progress towards goals with the end goal to elevate student achievement. And then it also acknowledges our board and the effort over this current year and in the past for oversight on district academic and instructional programs, guidance over state and federal safety guidelines, fiduciary leadership over the district's challenging budget, and providing social emotional support for students, families, staff as a result of this challenging year. So congratulations to each of you for your dedicated service to the community of Mountain House and the Lammersville School District.
Thank you, Dr. Nicholas.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to committee reports. District Advisory Committee. At this time, there's nothing to report. District English Language Advisory Committee, Trustee Bonilla.
Yes, we are having a District English Language Advisory Committee meeting tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. Otherwise, nothing to report.
Thank you. Education Committee, Trustee Pombo.
Nothing other than on Tuesday, February 16th at 6:30, we will be having an Education Committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. Facilities Committee, Trustee Clements.
Actually, President Lampel, I was unable to attend the last one, but you were.
We did have a meeting in December, and the one item that we took action on will appear later in our board agenda. Policy Committee, Trustee Bonilla.
Trustee Clements and I have been reviewing the next set of policies. I believe they are completed and will be forwarded on to the board for the next meeting.
Thank you. Safety Committee, Trustee Pombo.
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay. And also Trustee Pombo, the Wellness Committee.
The Wellness Committee will be holding our next meeting on February 10th at 3:30 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Governing Board reports. If I could ask for a little bit of assistance, is this where we call in for the student member report?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with our student member, Jithendra.
I have nothing to report at this moment.
Okay, Trustee Bonilla.
I wanted to just continually thank our staff and employees for their hard work for students. I know that things in our state continue to be challenging, and they are doing their very best for students, and I want to applaud them for their efforts. Also, I just wanted to, for the record, hope that many of our youth were able to see the inauguration today, especially the poet laureate, who was proof that, you know, the age does not matter on what you can achieve, that at 22, she could be there speaking in front of the president at his behest, excuse me, shows that youth is the future. And I think that our district needs to be proud of the youth here who are doing some really amazing things, and I encourage them to continue.
Thank you. Trustee Clements?
Yes, since the last board meeting, I had a site visit at Cuesta, which was very informative. And I wanted to thank Principal Sharp for spending the time with me that day. I also had the opportunity to be a judge for the regional competition for DECA, which is a co-curricular program that exposes our high school students to business concepts such as entrepreneurship, marketing, finance, hospitality, and management. Of course, it was completely remote, but it was great to see students from around NorCal learn and compete. And there were quite a few Mountain House High School students as well. And I will also be judging at the state competition as well.
Great. How did our kids do?
Well, because it's remote, I only got to see my pieces, but there were a couple of, and my piece was business plan, was a original business plan. And there were a couple of Mountain House projects that were phenomenal.
Great. Thank you. Trustee Olson?
I just wanted to give a shout out. If we were in person, you would all see this, but since we're on Zoom, Troop 1261 of the Girl Scout troops led by Shannon Meyer and Vicki Beckman is watching us tonight. They invited me to a Zoom meeting this past week because they're learning about citizenship, and they wanted to talk about going through the election process, and and then they asked some amazing questions, and they're watching tonight to see the government in action. And so I just wanted to give them a shout out. They're mostly fifth graders who attend Wickland and I think Cuesta. So Troop 1261, I just wanted to say hi. We're glad to have you here.
Welcome, Girl Scouts.
and then I just echoing what Ann said, I do know based on my children that a lot of teachers made the effort to let our children watch a historic inauguration. And I appreciate our teachers doing that. I just wanted to let them know, if you were able to make that happen for your students, thank you, because I know you already have a lot on your plate with Zoom and your students, and appreciate that, and so do their parents. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Pombo?
All I have to report at this time is that I participated in the Red Cross blood drive at Mountain House High School a week and a half ago, I guess, and I was pretty amazed at the turnout. In fact, I understand that all the slots were booked up within just a very short time of them becoming available. So spoke well for Mountain House, and I hope next time they open more slots up so more people can participate.
Great. So my board report, I attended the facilities committee in December, which we'll see some stuff on the agenda later on. I also attended a webinar about supporting California's safe schools, and will attend a budget workshop for San Joaquin County School Districts tomorrow. The virtual conference hosted by CSBA that we all attended in December is still online, so it gave me the opportunity to continue to watch sessions through the end of January. So being housebound under COVID stay at home, I've had time to watch some of them. So far I've watched presentations on virtual meetings, sex trafficking, and building a strong governance team. And if any of you are interested, those sessions are only going to be available through the end of December. I'll be visiting a virtual lesson at Wickland tomorrow. At our December meeting, the board approved the first interim budget report, which informed us of a positive certification. And this means that barring no changes, we can currently meet all of our budgetary obligations for the next 3 years. We have received the formal notification from San Joaquin County Office of Education that they agree with this positive certification. And I just wanted to give a shout out getting that formal letter to our business department. Great work as usual. We see the whole report and it is huge. It's a lot of work. And lastly, I wanted to commend our student board member, Sanhita, and the entire leadership team for sending out positive messages, encouraging Mustangs to take care of themselves, their families, and friends. Starting yesterday, the Mountain House High School Masking a Difference Club is sharing some important information about how wearing a mask can help reduce the impact of COVID-19 in our community. These impactful infographics were sent out yesterday and will continue through the end of the month. Sanita, they were fabulous. I hope everyone reads them and pays attention. Okay, moving on to receiving public comment. The board shall give members of the public an opportunity to address the board either before or during the board's consideration of each agenda item. At a time so designated on the agenda, members of the public also may bring before the board matters that are not listed on the agenda of a regular meeting. The board may refer such a matter to the superintendent or designee or take it under advisement, but shall not take action at that time. The board may place the matter on the agenda of a subsequent meeting for discussion or action. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item, and the board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and remaining in compliance with Governor Newsom's stay-at-home order, public comment is currently accepted electronically. So Superintendent Nicholas, do we have public comments to be read?
Yes, we do. I'm going to go ahead and start those now. Nicole Spear, I implore you to work toward getting our children back to the in-person classroom. It is absurd that our children have spent out of in-person school for nearly an entire year from a virus that most working age people survive, especially now that there are therapeutics and a vaccine. The students are missing out on so much. There are more risks of mental health issues, suicide, isolation, being sedentary, and even for some unhealthy living situations than from the effects of COVID. On January 11th, Ripon School District in San Joaquin County went back to in-person school. Why haven't we? There is no science to back the idea that kids and schools are super spreaders of this virus. Plus retail, our grocery stores are open. Why aren't schools? Why aren't our schools getting a waiver that allows other schools to open like many private schools? Yash Kamdar, with growth of Mountain House and new elementary schools being added, can you please share data projected when we would need another high school? What's current capacity and how much it can expand? When will we need new high school and when should start planning? Ryan Lehue, I just don't understand how another school in the same county can be in session and we are still remote learning. Does the board need to see a public outcry, demonstrations, etc., before determining many of us want our kids back in school? We all know this is not healthy for the kids and we're going to be headed down a slippery slope of childhood obesity, depression, suicide, etc. Do what's right and not what's easy. Get these kids back with their friends and teachers. Natalie Lehue, dear board members, I write to you today as a very concerned mother of 3 boys. It has been nearly a year since my older children have attended in-person school. Since that time, I have noticed the steady decline in their overall motivation and desire to learn. Gone are the days when they would come home from school and excitedly tell me of the fun facts they had learned in class. Now when asked how was school, they simply reply boring or waste of time. On my days off, I often find them sitting in a dark room, still in their pajamas. They are so incredibly bored staring at a computer screen all day. It's hard to tell if they are even listening to their teachers. Perhaps many of you have forgotten that a lot of us parents are unable to work from home. It's near impossible to be sure both my older boys are fully engaged all day long. Are any of you parents, are you not at all concerned about the children's mental health? I work in the Bay Area Hospital as an RN. I can assure you children are not being treated for COVID. They're being treated for depression, suicide attempts, and child abuse. Offering counselors via Zoom is basically an insult. I ask you, please remember what drove you to become board members in the first place. Do something that actually matters for the kids. No more inspirational videos. Bring the kids back to school. They need and crave human interaction. Parents, such as myself, help to vote you in your position. Please represent my voice and the voices of the other concerned parents. Thank you. Hudson Lehue, I'm a sophomore at Mountain House High School, and all I want is for in-person school to go back. I hate Zoom. I'm not engaged whatsoever. My freshman year was amazing. This year, school year has been awful. Nolan Lehue. My name is Nolan Lehue. I'm in 8th grade. I'm so mentally and physically tired of Zoom. I miss normal life. Each day it's getting harder and harder. Please get us back to school. Logan fear. I miss school, my friends, and sports. I miss out on my 8th grade year and maybe graduation. I really want to go back to school. I learned better there. Emily Klemenchik. Is there a plan for Mountain House High School to return to school? If so, can it please be discussed? I am a teacher at a local high school and we have been back in session full-time since October. We applied for a waiver and it was granted right away. I've heard nothing about Lammersville Unified Schools applying for waivers. Is there a reason for not doing so? Thank you. Joshua Klemenchik. I'm a student at Mountain House High School and I'm wondering what our return date to school will be. I do not feel like I'm getting an effective education over the screen. It makes me sad every time our return date gets pushed back. We will be able to come back to school this year, or when will we be? Thanks. Wendy Rivolo. When will return to Mountain House High School roll out be discussed? There are some tasks best done in person, specifically testing. The new virtual testing center requirements are difficult to comply with. We do not have extra streaming cameras lying around to record student testing. We don't even have a room to guarantee no other person will be present during testing. My kid won't use her bedroom as she views it as an invasion of her privacy. She understands what cheating may be while cheating may be the concern, so she's willing to go to the testing center in person and will mask up and take any other COVID precaution required. Luca Montalvo. I'm currently a 10th grader at Mountain House High School. I'm very eager to return to campus for in-person classes. I am over distance learning. I want to be back in class and in the field with my teachers, coaches, and classmates. This can be done in a safe manner. We have seen other schools in other states do it. When can we get back to school? Noah Montalvo. I'm a middle schooler at Wickland. I want to return to class. Distant learning has been very hard for me. It is hard to be motivated. I sit in front of the screen since last March. When will I be able to go back to school? Michelle Montalvo. I'm a parent of a middle school, high school student. It is time for our school campuses to be open to our students for on-campus learning. Our district has had ample time, 10 months, to accommodate COVID protocols. Our children's education is essential and need to be back to school. Distance learning is not one size fits all. We are doing a disservice to our children and thrive with in-person instruction. Our children need to return to school now. Corrine Hudson. As a mother of an 8th grader and a junior in high school, I'm gravely concerned that my kids have not been in school for more than 10 months. Having worked with children for the past 25 years, I know schooling by Zoom from the isolation of one's room day in, say, day out is definitely not the most effective way to learn. The past year has been a struggle for everyone, for our kids are suffering. Many are suffering academically, but even more are suffering from the isolation. With school sports being stripped away, there's no healthy outlet for stress and connection with peers. And sadly, many of these students have lost so much playtime, it will affect college scholarship opportunities and the ability to play at a collegiate level. I have seen signs of depression in my own kids as well as others. I implore you, as those who represent the students, please fight for our kids to get back to school so they can resume some sense of normalcy in their lives. Their futures depend on it. There are many school districts around the country that are wide open and safely operating. There are even schools open in the nearby town of Ripon. Let's explore how to get these kids back to school safely ASAP. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. And Ryan Puryear. Duplicated, sorry. Recently, parents received a letter informing us that once again, the potential start date for in-person instruction has been pushed back to a later date. My concern is the letter referenced scientific reason for delay in getting our kids back to school, but the science was one-sided. 11 months into COVID pandemic, there's plenty of science to support children going back to in school. Duke University recently published a study supporting in-person schooling for children supported by extremely low health risks to children, extremely low student to student and student to staff transmission rate, psychological risk of isolation, and there's some kind of typo here, learning capacity. I believe it is extremely important that the board take more aggressive stance in getting our kids back to school. There are many school districts across the country that have successfully taken this bold step and put the overall health and safety of students before political pressure. Madam President, that is the public comment.
Okay, and you will get back to, I think it was the second comment about high school numbers. You'll get back to that, parent?
Correct.
Okay. And the other comments were all about opening schools, so we'll keep the public informed as things change. Okay, moving on to consent items for consideration. We have the governing board meeting minutes of December 16th, 2020, contracts under $50,000, ratification of budget revisions and warrant list from December 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020, and recommended ratification of the budget revisions and warrant list from the same dates. Ratification of 2020-2021 new hires, ratification of resignations, and updated 2020-2021 fundraisers. Is there anyone who would like to discuss any of these items or pull any of them from the consent agenda? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve consent items.
Second.
Okay, having a first and a second. Any additional comments or questions? Student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes. Now I would like to read the names and welcome these folks to our Lammersville family. New employees: Gina Battisti, Learning Commons Technician; Jose Molina, K-8 Custodian 1; Maria Ramirez, K-8 Custodian 1; Tasnim Sadiq, Noon Duty Supervisor; Susan Sly, Self-Contained Classroom Teacher; Kalinda Ben Thakar, Special Education Aide; Leslie Weiss, Food Service Worker; Lonnie Walker, Campus Supervisor; and Atsuko Yuki, Instructional Aide. Welcome to Lammersville. Okay, moving on to District Administrative Report. Superintendent's report?
Yes, I have a few announcements. Some important stuff's been coming down from the state, but first I wanted to congratulate the board and the district. The online resource called Niche or Niche, depending on who you're talking to. Lammersville Unified has been ranked #1 best school districts in the Stockton area. So congratulations to all. I also, a periodical came out from AXA that represents all of the administrators of the year from this past spring. And right here, our own Ben Faubert, the secondary administrator of the year, is acknowledged, and it's a great picture of him. So congratulations again to Mr. Faubert. And then I'll get to the business of the state. The state is having a busy year getting information out and setting guidelines for educators throughout the state. The January budget proposal is a very important starting point in the budget process. We were told last year to prepare for up to a 14%. Hold on, we might be having. All right. Okay. Sorry about that. We lost somebody. So the budgeting process is there's a January proposal, a May revise based on mid-year tax returns, and then usually in June or July at the passing of the budget. So the budget proposal is significantly better than what we were told to prepare for. So just a reminder, the budget that we're working with contains the hold harmless provision, which cost our district over $2 million. And we're dealing with that deficit all year long and fighting this pandemic. But the good news is in the 21-22 budget proposal, there was a robust tax revenue, mostly coming in from a high stock market, and $85.8 billion for K-14 education, which is technically $3 million larger than the 2021 allocation. However, there are some important facts that need to be expressed with that. One of them is this current budget we're operating under was done with approximately $13 billion in deferrals, meaning the state borrowed money from itself to keep funding going for public education, so we didn't have to make emergency cuts. And this budget proposal from January addresses about 67% of the money that was borrowed, the state borrowed from itself. But it also held back approximately 1/3 of those deferrals, which means that some money, additional monies could have come to public education in the form of paying off the entire deferrals. Secondly, I thought this was a nice analogy. One of the things that is very common in California that governors and their administrations tend to do is they always count the gross number in the budget proposal, and it's always the biggest one ever. However, when you look at last year's budget and the fact that it was based in deferrals, they can claim a big number, 85.8 billion, and they get credit for that. But it's also paying back the deferral isn't actually a genuine amount of money. So this was likened to giving somebody a cut in pay and then making their wage or pay whole and claiming they got a raise. So though we're thankful for a significantly better budget than we were told to plan for, it's still catching up with monies that were not coming forward in this current year for next year. But here's the good news. There's good and the bad to be considered. 2/3 of the deferrals, $9.2 billion, were restored to the budget. That's a good thing. They are projecting a COLA of 3.84%, which is 2.3 from this year, which was turned into a zero COLA. They've now applied 2.3 and 1.5 for next year, 21-22, for a total of 3.4 COLA. If that stands, that's good. There's 4.86 billion to address learning loss. There's 315 million for teacher development and 305 million for new special funding, which I'm going to translate as potential new categorical funds that may squeeze local control. But I haven't seen the details on that. The bad in this is 1/3 of the deferrals remain. And there's a concern that the local control vision of Governor Jerry Brown might be fading a little bit in the current administration as categorical programs seem to be coming forward. And there is no funding in this for broadband access for rural and poor communities. So that is context to get to the next part of my update. This document here, which is entitled COVID-19 and Reopening in-Person Instruction Framework and Public Health Guidance for K-12 Schools in California, is the updated safety plan and all the guidance. It is currently approximately 50 pages long. We have, as a staff, reviewed this, and in terms of the expectations around safety protocols and the guidelines, we have, I can say to the community and to the board, we have set up our schools as safe environments, following the protocols from the public health experts. So that's a good thing. There's one caveat to that, and that comes in the form of this article, which Prop 98, which is the guarantee of public funding for public schools, is a guarantee. In this pandemic, $2 billion have been pulled aside and are being incentivized to try to open schools up. And in the incentivizing, there's a move to ask school districts to play a more significant role in public health related to testing. And so they have produced a playbook, which is a very thick document in which all of the safety protocols and such are put forward. But one of the challenges that school districts are facing is an unclear and unspecified mandate for testing students and staff. And so we are waiting for guidelines and guidance. We would love to be able to be a participant in the $2 billion that was put aside for this return to school. It's called the Safe Schools for All. But I cannot bring to the board a recommendation for how we would do that without all the details. And then I received this document from very important organizations that support public education. AXA, CSBA, CASBO, SECESA, and SSDA. They're all the California Administrators Program, the School Business Officials, the School Boards Association, the Small School Districts Association, and the County Superintendent's Educational Association. And I'm just going to read the highlights of the concerns with asking school districts to take a significant step into public health services related to testing, and the concerns that were presented to the governor and his team for reconsideration about the $2 billion incentive. And so it reads as such. For all safe schools and all plan, for the Safe Schools for All plan to effectively support school districts, the plan's testing requirements must be attainable for school districts. The proposed funding inequities must be remedied. Schools currently open for in-person instruction must be protected, and collective bargaining must be addressed. None of those things presently are clear, and all of those things need to be clear for this team to put together a plan that I could bring forward and say, we're ready to make this move. Some other finer points. Number one, education funding must be committed to education services and must mitigate inequalities heightened by the pandemic. Number two, the testing requirement will preclude some LEAs from participating because it's cost prohibitive and you don't have the staff to do the work. Number three, schools currently providing in-person instruction must be expressly protected in the plan to avoid the unintended result of additional closures. Number four, the plan must align with public health guidelines and guidance regarding consultation with labor, parent, and community organizations. And then the final point of these organizations who support the concept but want better guidance and more clarity and support from the state. It says, in addition to the critical issues above, the Safe Schools Plan for All must also address the following obstacles to provide in-person instruction. The state must establish clear, consistent public health standards for when and how school sites and school districts provide in-person instruction. Number two, to avoid the well-documented staffing shortages during the pandemic, the state must approve temporary emergency certificates and establish a strong financial incentive available to both certificated and classified employees to join substitute pools. And the final point made is educators must continue to prioritize for vaccinations due to their societal impact and rapid ability to receive vaccinations. So I just wanted to put out into our public meeting here that we are prepared to meet all of the public health guidelines, guidance, and expectations. The $2 billion incentive around safe schools, I cannot say with confidence that A, the direction is clear enough, B, that it's specific enough, and C, that we have the capacity to meet those expectations. As more information comes forward, we will bring more information out. But the $2 billion would give an ADA per student amount if we were to pass all of the obstacles and jump through all the hoops for that money. At present, I can't say we're ready to do that. Madam President, that is my superintendent's report.
Okay, and just to piggyback on that a little bit, I spoke to Director Andy Sue, who is now the president of the CSD board. And when these things start to become a little bit clearer and we know exactly what the money is for, the possibility of looking into a partnership with them so we could possibly include the community in some sort of testing protocol. But that's just kind of very vague thoughts out there. We don't have enough to move on, but Andy did say he's interested in talking to us about it. So we'll see how all of that rolls out. Right now, we don't even have enough information to start looking at any kind of plan. So item B, enrollment report.
I'm proud to say our enrollment is currently 6,388 students.
Wow. I still can't get over the fact I've been on the board for 8 years and we had 2,500 kids when I started. So the quarterly report on the Williams uniform complaints, November 2020 through January 2021.
There are no reports.
Okay, and our district maintenance and operations report.
Mr. Harrison? Your mute is on, sir. You're muted. Still muted. There you go.
Sorry. Board President Lampel, trustees, Dr. Nicholas. I will be giving the report on behalf of Mr. LeGrand tonight. The custodial staff is working on daily cleaning, sanitizing the schools, and stockpiling PPE supplies. Staff continues to keep the schools clean and ready for when students return to campus. The operations staff is working on the delivery of PPE to sites as requested by the sites and the daily monitoring of custodial staff. The maintenance staff is working on work orders. The biggest project that they are currently working on is adding black metal fence panels to the exterior walls of the ceramics area at Mountain House High School to better secure the kiln area. Mr. LeGrand attended the facilities committee meeting on Thursday, December 17th. He provided the committee with facilities updates. He also facilitated the lead custodian meeting on Monday, December 21st. Agenda topics were winter break, site plans, work areas, and responsibilities for daytime and evening staff. Keenan was on the district sites on Monday, January 11th, and Tuesday, January 12th, to perform their annual chemical inventory for all sites. No major issues were identified during the inventory. He will have a full report in about 2 weeks. The solar project has officially kicked off. They had a kickoff Zoom meeting on Friday, December 15th. Utility locating started on Monday, December 28th, and was completed on Wednesday, January 6th. Core sampling started on Wednesday, January 6th, and was completed on Thursday, January 7th. Site surveying started on Monday, January 4th, and will be completed at the end of this week. We have a Zoom check-in meeting tomorrow morning to discuss next steps. Upcoming items, this Friday, the annual fire inspection at Lammersville will occur. They're setting up custodial interviews for next week for Cordis, Wickland, Cuesta, and Mountain House High School. And on Thursday, January 28th, they will have a technology review meeting for Costa Elementary School. Any questions?
How does that do, does that fill Jimmy's staff, or does he still have openings?
If we can get people to take the positions and if we have enough people to interview, that will backfill the rest of the positions.
Great.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay, moving on to our action items. Item A, consider approval of 2020-2021 inter and intra-district transfer requests. Staff report?
None.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the 2020-2021 Lammersville Unified School District inter and intra-district transfer request presented herein as of January 7th, 2021.
Did we get a second?
Yes.
Okay. Additional comments or questions? All right, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes. Item B, consider approval of 2021-22 inter-district transfer requests. Staff report?
None.
Okay, I can't believe we're doing these for next year already. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the 2021-2022 Lammersville Unified School District inter-district transfer request presented herein as of January 7th, 2021.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any comments or questions? Student preferential vote?
Aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes. Item C, consider approval of Amendment 1 to the Facility Use Rental Policy Handbook, additional cleaning costs due to pandemic. Staff report?
This is an additional cost related to the additional expectations for cleaning tied to the pandemic. And we recommend approval of the cost or fee increase.
And this is the item that was mentioned earlier in the committee reports that I said would come onto the agenda. And due to the pandemic, we do have additional cleaning needs. So we need to charge folks who are using our facilities for that time.
Move to approve the amendment number 1 of the Facilities Use Rental Policy Handbook, additional cleaning costs due to the pandemic.
Second.
Okay, any additional comments or questions? Student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes. Item D, consider approval of 2020-2021 Independent Auditor Selection Form. Staff report?
Yeah, this is a really exciting one to present about. This is a form that we have to approve. And we're in a third year of our auditor contract.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve 2020-2021 Independent Auditor Selection Form.
Second.
I think Ann eked that one out. Any additional comments or questions? Student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes. Okay. Consider approval of Governing Board Resolution number 2020-21-08, confirming appointment of Citizens Bond Oversight Committee member. Staff report?
Yes, we have 2 members to fill 2 openings, Alreda Tolbert and Saba Kamri.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion. Are there any questions or comments?
I just want to say welcome. That was the committee I was on before I was at. So I'm grateful people stepped up. And if there's no other comments, I can move to consider approval of Governing Board Resolution number 2021-08, confirming appointment of Citizens Bond Oversight Committee member.
Second.
Okay, any additional comments or questions? Okay, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I think we need a roll call vote on that.
Ann Benia,
Aye.
Colin Clements,
Aye.
Sharon Lampel,
Aye.
Stephanie Olson,
Aye.
David Pombo.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item F, consider approval of public disclosure form AB 1200 of collective bargaining agreements for unrepresented certificated and classified confidential management groups, California Schools Employees Association, chapter 873. Staff report?
Yes, this is one of my favorite things we get to do. This approves formally the accounting process for increasing the compensation of all of our employee groups. And I want to again thank the leaders of both of our unions, Erica Smith-Payne and Nick Lanier. But we want to really say thank you to all the hard work of all the folks who work at this district and reward them with a good salary and compensation package.
Any questions or comments from the board? Well, I'll just jump in there and say it's a refreshing breath of fresh air to have employee groups that work with us rather than against us. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve public disclosure form AB 1200 of collective bargaining agreement for unrepresented certificated and classified confidential management groups, California Schools Employee Association, chapter number 873.
Second.
Okay, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes. Item G, consider approval of temporary certificated hire, Leanne Nina Adorable, speech therapist pathologist at the district office from January 4th, 2021 through June 4th, 2021. Staff report?
Yeah, this will allow us to fill a person out on leave, and we recommend the approval.
So moved.
Do we have a
Second.
second? Was that Colin?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, student preferential vote?
Aye.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes. Moving on to information and discussion items. Item A, mid-year student placement review. Staff report?
Yes, so as we've been managing a myriad of challenges with COVID-related things, state guidelines, and attempting to educate 6,300, almost 6,400 students, one of the promises we said this late summer was that we would make a review for people who were in a program that wanted to make a shift. I want to thank Mr. Harrison, Irene Busatil, and and their teams for figuring out what is an unbelievably complicated puzzle. It seems simple when you say, well, just move this group to A to B and B to C and everything's good to go, but it's not simple at all. So Mr. Harrison is going to present the results of that effort related to the requests of students who would like to move from one program to another. Mr. Harrison?
Thank you, Dr. Nicholas. Board President Lampel, trustees. So the changeover from LVLA to hybrid or vice versa really came in two waves. And the first wave, change the slide, please. The first wave occurred in the fall before the holiday break. And before I kind of give you the details of what that first wave was like, I want to kind of give you an idea of what the enrollment is like so you kind of know the size and scope of what we're talking about. So the current LVLA enrollment is 1,932 students, and that equates to 72 sections. And you can see the breakdown by grade level on there. And this is for obviously the K-8 schools. I'll talk about the high school in a moment. So when we tackled the first wave of students that wanted to go from hybrid to LVLA or from LVLA to hybrid, what we did is we looked at our current staffing and figured out where all the seats were. So what we did is we went through our list of applicants or waiting list, so to speak, to see what grade levels we had people waiting and the order of operations in that those that have waited the longest got placed first because those folks had been waiting longer than others. So initially we had 50 students that we placed from moving from hybrid to LVLA, and this happened before the holiday break. And then we had 5 students that moved from LVLA to hybrid. Now, during this process, when we called individuals to find out if they were still interested in moving, we had 69 students on the waiting list refuse to move. And those were a variety of reasons. One, they didn't like where the placement was. They didn't want their kid going to a different school or to a different teacher because they like the hybrid teacher they have or the LVLA teacher they had, whatever the case may be. So those 69 students remained on the waiting list. Now, the total number of students that were on the waiting list at this time was approximately 240. So once we did the moves and figured out who was willing to move and wanted to move and who didn't, that left about 185 students on the K-8 waiting list. So that takes me to the second wave, which I'll discuss in just a minute. Those 185 students getting moved to in the second wave. Next slide, please. So the high school at the same time was looking at program changes is what they call it at the high school. They have 338 enrollees in the online program at the high school. They had 41 program change requests to go from hybrid to fully online. Now remember, they're still distance learning, so these changes are changing the hybrid online distance learning that they're doing now to the fully online program. So there were 19 of those changes granted. And the reason there's 19 is a variety of reasons. 8 changed their mind when they were contacted, which we had a bit of that with the K-8. 9 never responded to the request from the high school. And then we had a variety of students that wanted to make some moves that they didn't think was academically logical for the student because they weren't doing as well in distance learning as they could. So moving to full online was not beneficial to their education. Now, the program change request moving from online to hybrid, they had 12 students that wanted to go the other direction. 8 were granted during those changes. 3 changed their mind, and then 1 withdrew that put in a request they had withdrawn, so they were no longer a viable changeover to the hybrid program. Next slide, please. So phase 2 of this addressing the waiting list is approximately 185 students that are still on that waiting list that are looking to move from hybrid to LVLA. So our solve for this at mid-year, and is the second wave that I talked about, is adding a section each of first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. Long-term subs that would take the position as long as needed through the rest of the year or until we are head back to school. Those grade levels, filling those positions would give those grade levels a net zero sum of people waiting on the list for those grade levels. If we filled those students that are on the waiting list, it would leave 4 in kinder, 1 in 7, and 13 in 8th grade that would still be on the waiting list. Now, the 4 on the kinder list is kind of a misnomer. They were all offered to move into a LVLA program, but they didn't like where it was. So they wanted to stay on the waiting list to see if they could get where they wanted to go. So in my mind, we've addressed all of the moves from hybrid to LVLA, all the requests, except for the 7th grade first, the 1 in 7th grade and the 13 in 8th grade, which I think we can assess further down the road to see what those numbers look like. Any questions?
Okay. Any questions from the board? All right. And just to kind of piggyback on what was said, you know, the students don't show up in nice, neat little packets of just the right number of 3rd graders or just the right number of, you know, students in advanced biology. And it's every year it's a puzzle to deal with. So great work and attempting to accommodate all of our students and parents. So thank you to the staff for that. I know that's a lot of work. Moving on to item B, semester D and F rate. Staff report?
Yes, Assistant Superintendent Sherburne gave a presentation recently with older data, and we said we would bring back fresh data at the semester, and now that is that time. So I'd like to turn this over to the Assistant Superintendent.
Good evening, President Lampel, Dr. Nicholas, trustees, and our Mountain House community. I am here to share with you the mid-year update for this from the semester grades on the D&F ratio at the high school. When I presented prior to Christmas, we were able to share about progress reports and where that was at, along with the elementary data. Since the semester has finished, we are back now to look at what does that look like for the semester. There we go. So,
if I could just interrupt, can anyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
We are in presenter mode though. That's better. Yeah.
Is
All
it
right.
part of the screen off for everybody, or is it my computer?
No, it is me. I was asking Noel if it was just, we thought maybe it was just me because I have a split screen.
No, mine's cut too.
Okay. All right, but I think we're okay moving ahead the way it is for now?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay. So with that, at the semester for looking at our D and F students, our students who we are not serving as we would hope to be able to engage them, we did have a decrease of 3%. So there's about 10% overall of all grades being a D or an F, which is about a 3% drop from the progress report period that we had earlier on. And we did maintain some consistency across grade levels that you can see there. It looks pretty similar with the seniors doing just ever so slightly better. Next slide, please. When we looked at it by subject to see how our students doing in the different areas, it's not terribly different. We range between 5% of the grades in that category to 14% of the grades in the category being a D or an F. English language arts had the greatest improvement from the progress reporting period until the semester grade, or the quarter grades until the semester grade. They had a drop from 12% of Ds or Fs down to 5%. So there's some good progress there of digging in and doing some interventions and support. English language arts and math are 2 core subjects, along with PE, had the lowest percentage of D and F grades. So we're glad to see that in our 2 primary core areas, they're doing fairly well. As a comparison, next slide, please. Overall, there's about an 8% improvement from the quarter and progress report grades, and there's about a 3% improvement in the number of Ds and Fs between last year at the semester and this year at the semester. So with both metrics, we're doing just slightly better with fewer Ds and Fs. Next slide, please. So then we wanted to look at, but how many students, because the other sides are percentage of all D or F grades. This is how many students have D or F grades. When we're looking at the number of students who have 1 D or F, it's decreased quite dramatically, which is really great to see. However, it's inversely related to those students who do have a D or F. They have more Ds and Fs than they have had in the past. So that's unfortunate, and we're continuing to reach out. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. We did maintain that we have fewer Ds and Fs among our Black African American population. We had 50% last year, and now we have just over 20%. So it's slightly improved in that aspect. And the grades for the Asian Indian, Asian, Cambodian, American Indian, and Laotian all had pretty significant increases in the percent of Ds of them who had Ds or Fs as compared to last year. So that's something that we're going to have to continue to look into. Next slide, please. So in general, overall, if we look at it, there's for all grades, there's 10% of the grades are D or F, which I mentioned on the initial slide. That is about between a 10 and 20% gap for any significant subpopulation that we monitor with our overall population. When we look at the comparison from the quarter grades to the semester grades, our Black African American population stayed flat. We did have some minor movement among the different subpopulations of 2 or 3% moving from an F to a D or from a D to a C. So that is some progress that is being made, showing us our interventions are having some impact. The Hispanic had a net decrease of 2%. The special ed had a net decrease of 5%. And the EL population had an increase of 3% in the DF rate. 1% moved though from an F to a D, and 3% dropped from a C to a D, kind of meeting in that middle of the D. And our socioeconomically disadvantaged students were overall flat as comparison. Next slide, please. So after looking at the Ds and Fs, because we're most concerned with making sure that we are preventing and serving those students who have D or F grades, we do want to take a minute to look at the celebrations of the things that are going on really well. So it is worth noting that 73 to 75% of all of the grades in language arts, science, social studies, our core areas, were an A or a B. 58% of all of the math grades were an A or a B. So it's a large percentage of our students receiving A's and B's. In fact, 657 students had a total GPA of 3.0 or higher, and 532 students had a total GPA of 4.0 or higher. So that's roughly a third of our population having a 4.0 or higher, with a total of almost 70% of our students making honor roll. So a lot of students to be proud of for doing a lot of good work under what are not ideal circumstances for sure. So what are we doing to mitigate the losses and address those students who are in need with support? So first, the administration has already met with the teaching staff and the counselor staff and analyzed the data that they're keeping to track students who are struggling. The counselors have reviewed, sorry, next slide. Yes, thank you. The counselors have reviewed each student who has a D or F grade, and they have determined exactly what is going on. With that collective responsibility, meeting with the teachers, they're finding out the majority of the students that have D's or F's are either not attending class regularly or not attending a class at all. And we're really struggling to engage those students. So that's something that they're looking into now. Each student has different reasons why they're struggling with engaging with class and not attending class, but nevertheless, that's our responsibility to reach out and see how we can re-engage those students. So they're doing home visits, they're making phone calls to parents and students, they're looking at different options for learning that might better suit the students, they're providing counseling and social emotional support. And they're looking at what other alternative academic things they can do that would work best for that student. The counselors are then monitoring all of that. They have a large spreadsheet that they are keeping with detailed notes on each of these students, and they're following up on it. That spreadsheet is shared between administrators, counselors, and teachers, so everybody can monitor and keep track of what their contact is and what is going on with the students. And then overall, ultimately, we want to reduce the impact of these D and F grades to their GPAs for the students. We're looking at this year, similarly to last year where we did a hold harmless, the entire state did a hold harmless for students where they didn't have lower grades than they were earning prior to school closures. At this point in time, we want to look at, instead of giving D or F grades, we would have a D grade would be changed to credit, and an F grade would be changed to a no credit. If a student received an A, B, or C, they would still get their letter grade that they have earned. And in that way, a D grade and an F grade wouldn't negatively impact their GPA. Part of the rationale is that we, in this COVID environment, have not had the opportunity to really put our hands on kids and provide that academic support and intervention that we would really like to do. Now, in the case of the D grades being changed to a credit, if that student still wanted to or needed to use that class in order to have entrance into college, they would have to retake that in order to get an A, B, or C and get credit for that class for college entrance. So we think that we have a really good plan in place. I want to commend the high school for really taking detailed notes and reaching out to individual students one-on-one. I think the staff is working really very hard to help make sure our students are supported. And that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
Yes, just for clarification, you said that if students choose to get a pass or credit instead of a D, and then they need that course for college, they can retake the course. That's currently our how we do things now, right? If a student gets a D or an F, they can retake that course to get a grade.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? I had a question, Heather. I know we are bringing in small groups of the neediest students to the high school per the governor's plan. Are these students that you're talking about that we're trying to figure out why we're not meeting their needs and they're unable to succeed in class, are we trying to include them in any live instruction?
I would have to defer to Principal Faubert for the specifics on the details. I know that we have really made every effort to make if there is something that academically will work better for that student, and that's coming into campus, that they have traditionally been really working to make that work out for the student, still making sure that they're maintaining all of the safety guidelines.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the board?
I was just curious about, you mentioned attendance was a factor in a lot of the D's and F's, and I know you said you're looking into it and there's various reasons for each of the students, but is there a subgroup of students that it affects more? Like, is the attendance an issue more with kids needing special education services as compared to other groups of kids, or is it kind of across the board?
Without having calculated numbers specifically, my gut from looking at the spreadsheet is it's pretty fairly across the board in terms of significant subpopulations that we would monitor. Often they are students who have historically struggled in one way or another anyways. and now are also suffering from additional social emotional support, or don't have as much parent supervision as we might hope that they would have.
Yeah. And just one other question I had, it seems like sometimes students, during, I don't know if you've been able to find this amount of detail, because I know you're working with the high school, but have you learned if the students are struggling because they're not being able to engage via Zoom? I know a lot of students have told me they're more timid about asking questions on Zoom versus if they were in the class, if that makes sense. And I don't know if that's kind of information you're able to find out.
The anecdotal feedback that I've heard is that the students who are not really engaging aren't even attending.
Okay.
And of the students who do attend, though, there are some who are, let's say, struggling, but not struggling as great as a D or F, perhaps. They don't want to have their video cameras on. It's very hard for the teacher to really know what the student is thinking and how the student is engaging, or if the student is in fact even sitting in front of the computer because the screen is off. So those are some challenges that are going on. But in particular, the majority of these students that are having Ds and Fs, what they found out is they're just not even showing up to attend.
Okay.
So I did notice in all of the elementary newsletters last week, all of the principals got together and sent out a message to the parents of how the kids can be prepared for the online learning. And of course, part of that included, getting up, getting out of bed, washing your face, brushing your teeth, eating breakfast, and turning on your computer as well as the camera. I'm assuming with the older kids, it's harder for the teachers to say you have to have your camera on.
Well, we've certainly asked them to do that as well. And we've talked to them about the fact that they can help a student learn how to put a background on if the student doesn't want to have their personal home being exposed. Some of the students feel as if they don't even have the ability to block the other sounds that are going on within their home as well, though. So that can be a little bit of an alternative barrier. It's not just visual.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I observed a class in another district today, and it's easy for the kids to sit back and just watch. It's like they're sitting at home watching TV rather than participating. So I think part of it's that they're maybe intimidated. Part of it may be what Heather just mentioned, and that is that there are other noises in the home that they don't want heard, or background, or maybe they're not dressed and they don't want anyone to see that. So these are just things that teachers are dealing with. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Sherburne. Moving on, item C, instructional technology, staff report.
Yes, I was asked to look into instructional technologies that might allow us to do live streaming, or what I've been calling simulcasting, which I think is an old term now. But Assistant Superintendent Sherburne has looked into different models for the possibility of expanding our classroom instructional tools. And so she has a short presentation with some options if the board would like us to pursue expanding this technology.
Great. So back with me again. And we'll wait and give Noelle a minute. Great. Next slide. All right, so currently within our classrooms, we have a TV display, or in the case of the high school, they have a projector display. They have their teacher computer, which for the majority are Microsoft Surface. They have a NovaPro device in all of our K-8 classrooms, which allows the teacher's computer screen to be broadcast up to the television flat panel screen, or to the whiteboard screen from the high school. There's what's called an FSR panel, which is a fancy word for remote control. It's just how they control all of the devices and link it together. And then they're using the Zoom or Google Meet platform in order to communicate with the kids. So there's quite a bit going on, and quite a bit of technology just in regular distance learning instruction that's going on, just to kind of set the stage. So next slide, please. Some challenges if we were going to try and simulcast and teach students who are in the classroom in front of the teacher, as well as students who are at home via Zoom at the same time, are that the video capture requires that the teacher stay stationary right in front of the computer. And that really limits their ability to interact with the students in the in-person classroom instruction, which is the reason we want students to be back, so that teachers can interact with them and provide them with that support. The audio requires also that the teacher stay in front of the computer and limits the mobility of the teacher. As students talk in the classroom or students want to talk over the computer, the audio will cut in and out when you have multiple people talking. So that creates a challenge where teachers are muting and unmuting students over the computer, or stopping the group of students that are in the classroom to allow a student that is on the computer to participate. And so the logistics of that is another challenging aspect. Management of just the in-person students, and then also management of the online Zoom students presents two different challenges for having to manage that. If any of you have been in a classroom trying to work with a group of students, you know that just controlling that group of students in one area is a challenging aspect, much less doing it in two areas. Student privacy is an area of concern, potentially because of students seeing what else is going on in other students' homes via Zoom or vice versa in the classroom. It's potentially a change in working conditions, so it might require bargaining with our unit. And then the teachers are just going to be in a big learning curve to manipulate the additional equipment that would be needed. So just framing and keeping in mind what some of the challenges are that we would need to think about if we were going to try and do this. So basically, next slide, please. There are 5 category types that we could really look at. The first category we wouldn't recommend. That's where you would have another external webcam placed somewhere in the room, and you'd have a lavalier mic or a headset that the teacher is wearing in order to make sure that you're picking up the audio better and that the teacher can be seen at the same time the teacher is using their computer screen to display their instructional materials. So that setup still has many of the limitations that I mentioned earlier on the slide prior. The second option would be to have a multi-piece equipment called like a swivel or a gigabot or an owl. There probably are other devices out there similar to that. The cost is around $1,000 per class, so it's not super cheap. It requires that we have an additional iPad or phone or computer, something else that is picking up the picture and connected to this hardware. So there are a lot of pieces and connections that have to be manipulated. The camera would be able to track the teacher, so the teacher could move and be more mobile, which is really nice. However, the reports are that the camera movement is somewhat robotic, and that some students, when they've been trying it out in different classrooms, have reported getting seasickness, a little bit of motion sickness from the way the camera moves. It doesn't move it as smoothly as we would like. The teacher would have to wear a microphone and then wear these little micro dots that allow the camera to track the motion. So there's putting all of that on and off every time they're transitioning. So it's a little bit challenging to manipulate all of that. Next slide, please. The third option is what they call an all-in-one solution. And if we were going to try something, this would be the option that I think would probably best meet the needs and limit the challenges. PolyStudio or Meetup are 2 examples of that. Most districts are going with this type of a solution if they're giving it a try. The cost is around $800 a classroom plus tax and other kinds of costs that would get thrown in there. But it is a lot simpler. It's one device. The teacher doesn't have to wear anything. There's one USB port. So that decreases the load on the teacher for setup and takedown and all of, management like that. The camera tracking is a lot smoother. There's noise canceling built in, so that would help limit that audio cutting in and out. The teacher still has to be fairly stationary, although there is a wider range. So they can move around about the front third of the room is what has been explained. And then another benefit is that it's enterprise, meaning that we can control that from a district level, make sure that things are working, what's going on in the settings. And that's always beneficial when you're working in a professional environment, that you have an enterprise control. Next slide, please. The fourth option would be an auto tracking PTZ device. The recommendation from doing research is that this is really overkill for a classroom. It's really more set up for a larger like cafeteria or a gym. It's quite pricey at $1,500 to $2,000 roughly. It does provide some smoother things, but it is probably more than a classroom would really need. And then there are consumer devices like you may have seen on TV, like a Facebook portal. That's not an enterprise device, so it would not allow us as a district to control the aspects of that. It prefers connections to Facebook, even though it says it's compatible with Zoom. There's questions around the audio connection in a classroom environment where you have multiple people speaking and going back and forth with multiple people. There are some data privacy concerns when you look at their data privacy policies that we would have to really investigate and get data privacy agreements in place before we would be able to do that. And there are app installments for the students on their side of the device as well in order to make that work. So that'd be something else we would have to work through. So that concludes my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions if you have any.
If I could piggyback on your presentation for a moment, I mentioned earlier that I happened to do an observation in another district today, and that teacher had students in the classroom as well as students online at the same time. And from an experienced administrator observing this, the management of the kids online was absolutely impossible. When the students in the classroom were talking with the devices that teacher had, the online kids couldn't hear it, and the teacher had to repeat everything that the other students said. And here I am encouraging this teacher have the kids read aloud. So it was very difficult. And this teacher, you could see she just naturally called on more kids in the classroom than the kids online because it was easier. It's more of what they're used to. Just in my estimation, that entire setup was an epic failure and very difficult for the teacher. And she's drowning doing that. Just my 2 cents. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I would just like to say that I would not be in favor of having half the kids in class and half the kids at home in one of these setups. What my thought is that if we have kids who have, once we get back to in-person learning, we have kids that have to quarantine at home, whether because they're symptomatic or because they've been exposed or they test positive and they're asymptomatic, whatever the situation is, we should have a way to reach those kids at home while they're unable to attend school. And I think that having something like this would encourage parents to keep their kids home if they've been exposed or if they have symptoms, rather than sending them to school so that they don't fall behind.
I have seen this done, demonstrated, where the teacher has used a Surface as a work computer and then has the Surface projected onto the large screen so that the class can see it, and then the students are interacting with the teacher at home through the computer that she's carrying around, so that the computer is sort of like used as the video camera, where it's just following the teacher around, and then the teacher calls on, okay, now I want my in-home students to respond, and she'll just take a question from them, and then she says, I'd like my classroom students to respond, and I'll take a question from you. And so she goes back and forth. So I've seen it done fairly well. It does need, certainly I would say a headset would be beneficial because of the audio piece where she's, going to be moving around and there's going to be different audio challenges. But I have seen it done fairly well using just the very basics of a headset and a Surface Pro and those projected screens. My concern is that there are kids who aren't coming to school. Even if we go back to school, there are students parents who don't feel comfortable sending kids to school yet. And those kids are just missing out completely if we don't have another option. And so that's my concern, that those kids who maybe they have a healthcare issue or there's a healthcare issue in their family and they can't go to school, that those students are really missing out. I do realize we have the LVLA option for those students, and I hope that that's what they're taking advantage of rather than missing out on school altogether. But I do wonder if we could do better. That's my question.
And I'm wondering if we would need anything like that while we are, obviously not while we're still completely distanced, but when we re-implement hybrid, I think we have enough set up online to meet the needs of those kids. I would have to defer to the associate superintendent or the assistant superintendent to confirm that those kids, because there will be kids who have been exposed, have to stay home, or the parents, because of issues in the household, are uncomfortable sending the kids to school, and let's say there's no more room in LVLA. Would we be able to reach those kids through what we have already set up while we're in hybrid? Does my question make sense?
Let me restate it to see.
Okay.
Are you asking if we have an individual student who has to be at home while the teacher is teaching hybrid in the classroom? Would we be able to broadcast it to that student?
No, not broadcast, but have like enough set up asynchronously that student could keep up.
They are setting up the asynchronous work and
Yeah.
making sure that they have them available. I mean, similar to when a student is sick and it's not COVID. Teachers make arrangements and adjustments to help support a child who has to be home because of illness.
Yeah, and of course it's not ideal, but none of this is ideal.
Right.
Yeah. Other board comments?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I think that it doesn't, trying to do this seems really, like you said, not ideal for teachers and even for the learners who are there in person or at home. Hearing Trustee Pombo state, kind of the rationale as to why we were thinking of doing it, I think having the robust asynchronous in place for a student who may have to quarantine is the wise course, because after the pandemic is over, do we really need all of that technology? I mean, I feel like it's just going to create a lot more frustrations for our teachers, and maybe we can accommodate the needs of the students in a different way.
And remember, while we're set up in hybrid, having the kid do all asynchronous work is not ideal, but the teachers also have their afternoons and Friday time that student could be live online with the teacher to make sure that they're getting what they need. And again, none of this is ideal.
No,
Correct.
yeah.
I was just about to mention that there are other opportunities built into the day to meet with those students.
Right. I think once we go back to being fully live in school with the whole class, back to normal, if that ever exists again, we would have to address, what do we do about these kids? Because I think we'll have more kids out than we're used to. We have independent study, we have procedures set up for that. But I think as we get back to 100% face-to-face in the classroom, we're going to have more kids out than what we're used to, and we'll have to address it then. But I think for now, just my opinion as an educator, is that we have the structures in place to address these kids' needs.
Well, initially, my hope was that we had the technology and the ability to do something that wouldn't require additional technology and additional expense. My only concern is that we do all we can for kids, whether their parents aren't sending them to school because they're worried about what might happen, or kids who are at home because of exposure issues or positive test issues or whatever, that we're keeping those kids in the loop, so to speak, of their education so that they don't fall through the cracks.
Just to add, I think it would be interesting to maybe buy one or two of these devices. I think Mrs. Sherburne kind of identified one she thought might be worthy of looking into. And maybe post-pandemic, if we bought a small number in a particular class or an audiovisual or a CTE class, maybe there's something the tool could do. But I would be curious, having seen all these different options, to purchase maybe one or two and have at least the coordinators or someone play around with them and see, like really, it's one thing to have a discussion on facts, but it's another thing to put it into play and play around with it. Maybe in a special education setting, maybe there's something that can be done there. Or I don't know, this is going back to the 80s, but I had a history class that was a combination of two big giant classes. So maybe there's some things we can do. Would the board provide direction on the idea of getting a small number and seeing if one of this one tool that Mr. Sherburne is saying is the best of the options, play around with it and see if there's there for some option for us down the road, possibly.
I'd like to hear what staff would recommend, because with the exception of the way Trustee Bonilla explained it, I couldn't see any way for the teacher to manage the online kids at the same time, if they're being live streamed, because they have to stand in front of the class. Then you have a teacher that Anne has seen walking around with a Surface. I don't know, that takes a certain talent. I was a classroom teacher for 17 years. I don't think I could do that, to walk around with it, as I'm moving around the classroom. Because this teacher I saw today, the one thing she said she missed the most was she couldn't walk around to her kids in the classroom because her face had to be on the computer for the online kids. And if she walked away, this was a 5th grade class, the kids would click off or walk away or, go get a snack. So I don't know. I would be interested to see which ones we would want to test. I don't know.
I can tell you as a teacher, the idea of wearing little microdots all over me would just be a nightmare. So I vote no on the microdots.
Yeah, I was going
the
with
swivel,
the $800 one. Ms. Sherburne, can you help get me out of this hole I put myself into? It's not the microdot one I was referring to. I think it was the $800 one, right?
No, if we were going to try some out, I would suggest we try some of the all-in-ones. I've looked at the Poly Studio a bit. It looks really good. We could try the Poly Studio and the Meetup. I know that they would give us a short 1 week maybe trial of them that we could look at and try if we wanted to, and then get an idea of purchasing one perhaps and trying it, or two and trying it even longer if we wanted.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
One future use for these would be, I understand that we have students 8th graders that go to the high school for advanced math. They could stay on their campus and it could be live, the class could be live streamed to those students, which would help logistically from having to get kids from one campus to another and back.
And maybe get more kids.
Right.
Perhaps.
And save a lot of time for those students, the wandering and all of that. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I hear the board giving me direction is no microdots, and get the one that Heather recommended and play with it and see if there's some a use for it that would be beneficial in multiple different scenarios.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And Heather, all of those devices that you mentioned live streamed?
Well, you would still be using a combination of Zoom.
Okay.
Right now we're using the free version.
Okay. Because I was wondering, because I've used a swivel, and the one I used was just we had purchased it for teachers to record themselves for self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And it did have microdots, but they weren't dots. It was just a device that they put on their belt so the swivel camera could follow them. It wasn't like little dots all over the place like you see in AI movies and stuff like that.
Right.
Okay, so you're going to check into that and get back to us?
Correct.
Fabulous. Any other questions or comments from the board? All righty, moving on to item D, the Board Governance Handbook, the second reading. So the board was sent, all of the board members were sent sections of the Board Governance Handbook for suggestions for change. Trying to bring up the document. Here we go. Okay. Was anyone sent the first page? This title page?
As I recall, the direction was I was supposed to skip that one.
Okay. Okay, because I'll send, well, that section that's highlighted there, I didn't send it to Noel, I'm sorry, but I did have a suggestion. So I'd like to start this by running this little suggestion by the board on page 1, where it says in ways that best serve all students and the community. I think it may be better worded, a way that best benefits all children in LUSD. Crickets.
Can you repeat it again, Sharon?
So it says, the sentence is, this process involves discussions and reaching agreements on shared leadership roles and operating protocols that enable the governance team to perform its responsibilities in ways that best serve all students and the community. My suggestion is that enable the governance team to perform its responsibilities in a way that best benefits all children in LUSD. Of course, we would write out LUSD.
I like that. That works.
I'm
Sorry,
fine
I'm
with
just
that.
very visual. I just had
I
to-
know, and I forgot to send that. I'm sorry. The rest of my
No.
stuff I did send to Noel like everyone else. Okay.
My only problem with that would be that we owe a responsibility to the entire community, not just our students.
Well, I agree with you, but it's in other parts of the handbook that we're serving the community. Well, we can leave it as is. I mean, not that the highlight was wrong. I just, when I went through the book and I looked at all the highlights, I thought it was a suggestion that everything in yellow we should change, but since I went over this, I've realized that she just wanted us to take a second look at it.
Right, and
So
that's,
we
I
can leave
think
it
that's,
alone.
I think that's maybe the misunderstanding that some of the board members had, was that the highlighted things needed to be changed rather than needed to be looked at for potential change. And it's not that big of a deal either
Yeah.
way. I was just playing devil's advocate, to be honest.
We can leave it alone. We can leave the community in there. It wasn't a big deal. On
I'm
the
okay
table
either
of
way.
contents page, that whole first paragraph is not needed. On July, it's the whole history.
Right,
Going
right,
back
yeah.
to 2017, and we had a board workshop and blah, blah, blah. I don't think we need any of that. We can
No,
just
I
get right into the table of contents.
Mhm.
Okay.
Fine with that.
Okay, who did unity of purpose?
That would be me.
Okay, and you had some changes in there.
Yeah, I thought instead of focusing on student needs and growth, we could focus on student needs and continuous improvement, because it just kind of, I don't know, I just wanted to change the wording, I guess. I love that
It
we're
was
winning on
highlight.
many counts. Yes, I love that we're winning on many counts, but it seemed like an odd placement for that. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way it was worded. I thought it was just kind of like, it didn't go with the rest of what the structure was.
I agree with striking it. It's a little too informal for the purpose of this document.
Right. And the same thing with Measure L. If this is going to be an ongoing document, as great as it is that we did work with Measure L, like, we need to sort of have it be more broad and general, and not focused on a specific moment in time where we passed a bond measure. So that's why I thought we should take that out. Again, it was just a wording thing. Ensure the programming provides opportunities for all students to improve or grow or learn. To do their best sounded kind of like womp womp, like, do your best, Johnny. Like, I don't know, it didn't sound impactful enough. So
It's elementary.
yes, I was just, I'm a wordsmith person, so I was wordsmithing.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of your changes. Is there a specific word in that to
How about
replace do their best that the board likes more than the others?
How about fulfill their potential?
Oh, I like
I
that.
like that.
That's good.
I
Good,
like
good.
that a lot.
Home run.
Yes. good job.
Absolutely home run.
Okay.
That's good. That's good. Any other comments about this page? Page 3? Okay.
Can I just point out a quick funny, Madam President? On my sheet of papers, page 1 is the one we're on. So the ADD boy has spent about 5 minutes while you guys are having that fruitful discussion, trying to figure out where you were at. So I've now caught up, and so I thank you for your patience with me while I fumble.
We didn't even notice, Kurt. The last page I had was the mission statement here on page 4.
Wait, Ann, hold on a second. Did Noel get that word change in on the last one that Ann
Yes.
suggested? Okay, good. Okay. Go ahead, Ann.
So this last part, the mission statement, we keep that, but then we're outlining how we're going to achieve our mission statement. And this paragraph had these odd benchmarks. I mean, they're very solid benchmarks in the education world. You do want first graders who can read and fourth graders who can read or write, and eighth graders who are proficient for algebra. But it also seems like those are the only times that matter. And I didn't think we wanted to send that message. I thought that, like every single school year and every single school day matters, like for whatever you're learning. And so I didn't know if we wanted to keep those benchmarks in there. I thought we could just strike all of that.
I think you're making an excellent point.
I-
Other comments?
I like the benchmarks. My issue with that statement is that it's a little too rigid. I think that, well, we realize that those goals are unattainable. We can't guarantee that every first grader will be reading at grade level and so on. But I like that we have benchmarks or goals. I would like to see something a little softer, a little less rigid, or a little less defining, but still keeping some of that flavor in the statement. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it.
I was just curious, was that a statement that was just provided by CSBA that you didn't adjust before when you did this handbook, or does anybody recall?
I can give the history of that. When I came on board, we were working with a consultant whose name was Babs Kavanaugh, and there was a 5-year strategic plan that was being developed. This statement was in the strategic plan as benchmarks related to that plan. That plan sunsetted, I believe, in 2018 and no longer applies. And we've been doing LCAP and learning continuity plans since. So it may have been relevant 8 years ago, but is not relevant as it was.
What does the board think about taking those benchmarks and bulleting them under the we believe statements? We believe that all first graders can read and comprehend at grade level. I don't know, just a thought.
That sounds like a reasonable place for those benchmarks to me.
Yeah, I mean, I like setting an ideal. Like the trustee Pombo said, we can't always reach it for every child every year, but it should be our goal. We should be striving for it. So having bullet points to remind us what our ideal is, I think, is good.
When I was rereading it and thinking, I was honing in on the word striving, but I don't like, I don't know, it kind of gives an out, saying, okay, you strive towards it, you didn't reach it, it's okay.
Well, but I mean, you have to think that every kid learns differently and learns at a different pace. So by saying that every kid can learn at first grade, no, that's actually not true. Like every kid is not ready to read at first grade. Most of them are, and we want them all to be able to, but not every kid is going to be at the same benchmark at the same time because we all grow differently. So I think part of my concern with that statement was that, like we're leaving out, what about the kids who can't? what are we going to do about them?
Well,
You know,
perhaps some wording that states that our goal is that students be able to reach these benchmarks, understanding that not every student will reach them on our timetable.
Yeah, I mean, strive to get as many students to the benchmarks as you can, but we do recognize, you know, I've seen that even with my own 5 children, they all learn to read at different times, but we want to make sure that we've given them the tools so that they can succeed and get there in their due time. So I think it's good to have the ideals and then like maybe a general statement before that kind of addresses Anne's concern. It's hard to think of things like that on the spot. I need to have my little fingertips at a keyboard.
I know.
That way.
Maybe,
I
yeah,
can go
maybe
back
it
and
doesn't belong on this page. Maybe it belongs somewhere else. I mean, I like having the ideas, benchmarks. We don't have these anymore. Like Dr. Nicholas said, that came from the old strategic plan, which we don't use anymore. So, and that's what we were measuring at that time.
Yeah, and it would be nice to maybe align it more with what the current LCAP says, right? What are we saying that we want our students to achieve right now?
So I've heard 3 directions, so I'm going to make a recommendation that possibly staff play with this and bring it back, and the February 3rd meeting is the approval, but we can play with this until everybody's happy as long as we want, right? But what I heard was get rid of it, soften it up, bullet point it, and then tie it to an ideal, but include all kids. The benchmarks are too rigid. Did I capture the spirit of that?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay, so what if it's the board's direction, then we'll get together the team and wordsmith some more and see if we can make it work. But we'll make it work under the "we believe that" section. Is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, Trustee Bonilla, thank you for those suggestions. Who had roles and responsibilities?
I think I did, and I made no changes. There were no highlighted, and I didn't feel like anything was a glaring that needed updating or revisions, so I left it alone.
Did anyone else see anything in this section that they felt needed some adjustment?
Not me.
I didn't. Okay, we'll move on to board bylaw. Okay.
So I had this section, and I reviewed pretty much a lot of handbooks before I did this, and the way it was written as presented to me is pretty much, I think it was just the CSBA boilerplate section, that no district had anything different. So if the board wanted to leave it the same, that was fine. But I had decided, since that was assigned to me, I would play around with it and make some edits and suggestions that I thought maybe would make it sound a little more professional, is all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The hesitation, as I've explained to you, is that these templates come from CSBA and they're already vetted through legal to make sure that we're not overstepping and that we are clearly reflecting the role of the board. And we don't have to run these through our attorneys because CSBA has already done that. But is there anything in here that you felt absolutely needed to be changed?
Well, I thought that, let me see if I can find it. I'm sorry, my screen died and so I'm trying to look at it on my phone and it's hard to see. But
I was a little bit surprised that this was included for revision, much for the same reasons that President Lampel already stated, was that they may be somewhat boilerplate, but they are from CSBA and they've been vetted by legal, and so the intent is all vetted, And I don't know that I would be in favor of toying with it without sending it to legal. And I don't think, unless there are glaring issues with the wording, I don't think there's a reason to go through that expense, but that's my 2 cents.
Well, in reading her comments, like the very bottom one where it's number 2 on the bottom, clearly define and communicate, where communicate had a capital C. It may have been vetted, but I don't think it's correct.
No, because she added clearly define and.
Oh,
That's why
okay.
it's in blue.
That it's okay. So it's what the original wording was: capital communicating,
Yeah.
communicate a
is-
common vision.
The blue is the suggestions I had put in there.
And
Yeah.
I will take
Okay.
full responsibility for putting this one in play. It seemed like a good idea when I put it out there. But so I apologize for anything on that. But I'm the one who did it.
Trustee Olson, were you able to find any sections that you were really?
I mean, I think a lot of the suggestions that I had, we could potentially incorporate in something that's not a bylaw, but it was, a lot of it just definitional, I felt like I would like something to be said about the governing board setting the tone and climate for the district, because I think that's true. And, based on Kirk recognizing all of the board, I'm new, so I don't feel like I deserve any recognition, but you all do. I wouldn't have run for, office if I didn't think the board worked well. And I think the way, I liked that.
Oops, you're cutting out.
The the section where she talks about that, setting the tone and climate, and then all the changes underneath, I really like those changes. I think they're sort of clarifying comments, but I think they were good comments.
Maybe we can continue to work on the governance handbook and not bring it back next month for final approval, and see if we can take some of these concepts and find other places in the handbook, because they are good concepts. And find other places where they might fit rather than the board bylaw. Because we don't know what we're changing when we change board bylaws.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is true.
And being retired, I'm happy to work on this and take what Stephanie wrote and work with Stephanie and see if we can find other places where it'll fit, and then we can send it out to the rest of the board. Will that work for everyone?
Sounds reasonable.
Sure.
Okay, Stephanie, we'll play with this section.
Okay.
All right.
But my comment is, I would say, Stephanie, I like what you wrote. Whether or not we incorporate it into the actual bylaw or somewhere else, I like the tone and timbre of what you're saying. So.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, they're all excellent points. I'm afraid of changing what CSBA has sent to us. Okay. The agreements to facilitate governance leadership, whose section was this?
That was mine, and I had just one comment, which is the verb agreement. Governance team agreements are instead of is.
Okay.
Although, wait, no, because it's, I'm now rethinking the purpose of blank is to ensure. So it's the purpose of the Lammersville USD governance team agreements is to ensure. I don't know that I'm right on that.
Dr. Nicholas, what does the English teacher say?
So the
Exactly.
noun that the is associated with is the Lammersville USD governance team. Team is.
Okay, so we're going to leave it alone.
Mr. Harrison, fellow English teacher, would you agree with my analysis, sir?
Yeah.
There were no gerunds in that sentence.
That was the only thing I saw on that page.
Okay.
And meeting norms and guidelines was my page as well. And it says allow the chair will control the dialogue. Well, I changed that to control the dialogue. But then the last one is trustees will wait to be acknowledged by the chair. My comment is that if we're going to say that, we should do it. And if we're not going to do it, we shouldn't say it. I think that the board does a pretty good job of self-regulating. And so I don't think we need that comment in there.
I'm going
But-
to respectfully disagree. I think we do need the comment, and I'll tell you why. We're not writing this for this governance team. We're writing this for this and future governance teams.
But
So I think maybe it should be in there.
But if we're gonna say that we're going to do it,
Then we do
then
it.
we should do it.
Then we should.
I have
This
a,
was,
And I don't think that's necessary.
right
I
now
have a-
it's not. I agree.
I have a suggestion. My suggestion would be to change it to the board president shall run the meeting and control the conversation, comma, allowing all board members a chance to be heard. And rather than making it explicit that a person has to be acknowledged by the board president before speaking, just put the onus on the board president to run the meeting smoothly.
I like that, David.
Yeah.
I like
that's
that. What does the
good.
rest of the board think?
I like
Yeah.
that.
Okay, did Noel get that, Kirk?
I don't know, because I was going to confess that I thought it was great, but I can't find that section. Noel, did you get that?
It's called Meeting Norms and Guidelines.
Page
Yeah,
9.
I'm on that page, but I can't find it.
The
It's-
second
the
from the
second-
bottom
Oh, you
bullet.
know what? We got it. I got it. We got it.
Okay. Okay,
my
and
son-
Noel
I'm
got the
gonna call you.
wording, Noel got the wording that David just said?
It's recorded.
It's
so yes.
recorded, so the answer is yes. If not, I know his phone number.
Okay.
Really? You've never called me?
Okay, excellent suggestion. I really like that. Is the rest of the board okay with David's suggestion?
Yeah.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Protocols and procedures. Now, this was mine, and you can see there's a lot of changes in here. What I did was I also, like Stephanie, went online and searched out other board governance handbooks. And I found one where I liked the information. And I think Stephanie and Ann wouldn't know this, but if you look at that blue section, responding to concerns regarding the work of the district board members will, if you think about those agreements that we came to when we had that workshop on how to respond, not how to handle's a bad word, how to respond to concerns. So receiving the information and being an educator will recognize this. It's kind of affirming, hear the kid, redirect them. I hope the board had a chance to take a look at this. I liked that it was bulleted. I liked the wording better than what we had. I don't know how much it really changed, but I think it gives more specific instruction than the paragraph that we had. Thoughts? Tear it to shreds if you so choose.
The only recommendation I would have, or idea that I had, is the third bullet point that says, share with the appropriate line of command and process to follow to address their concern. My suggestion would be something along the lines of, board members should confer with the superintendent prior to sharing with other staff members, because I believe that, well, I don't think that the board members should be talking to a site principal about something that the superintendent isn't aware of.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I paused. I put a lot of thought into that, and I thought I would just leave it for now. But yeah, maybe just changing that line to say, share the concern with the superintendent, period.
That
Which
would
is
work too.
that is the appropriate line of command for a board
Yeah.
member too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Because
think
we
that's
have to-
appropriate.
We have to
Okay.
realize that the chain of command goes in both directions.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we'll change that one to share with the superintendent and redirecting that person. We can just take share out because superintendent is down below.
Yeah, we can
Take that-
remove that bullet point
Yeah.
entirely if,
This last bullet point is a little I know what you're trying to say, but I'm not sure it's worded very clearly.
I think
So-
it should stay, oh, wait, staff complaints are encouraged to. Well, if you get a staff member coming to you with a complaint,
Mhm.
okay? My principal told me I need to improve, and I don't agree with that. So we receive the information, we repeat it, we are taking that one out, we redirect, and who do we redirect them to? So do we want staff complaints going right from us to the superintendent? That's why it's, oh, maybe we should take superintendent out. I don't know. What does the rest of the board think on that one? Kirk, you have an idea?
Well, there's the informal and the formal. Usually, there's chain of command with a formal problem, complaint, serious thing
Right.
that would come directly to me.
I think
And
this
then-
is more informal.
And then there's an informal one where someone says, I just don't like that food, the cafeteria schedule. And that would be an informal one where you would say, well, my recommendation is you talk to the principal.
Mhm.
So that would be the two discerning moments, right? Which is you're just helping someone get to the right person to help. And then there's the one where there's the business of the district and that needs to come to me and we do the chain of command thing.
So we would change that one to staff complaints are encouraged to discuss the matter with their immediate supervisor
There you go.
and leave the rest of it out.
Okay, so here's the problem I have with this, and it's going to sound dumb, but staff complaints are not a thing to encourage. Like staff who have complaints, but staff complaints is not an item.
I don't understand.
You're
I
saying,
mean, it's-
you're saying it's the difference between saying staff complaints are encouraged and staff with complaints
Yes,
are encouraged.
yes. Because the staff are the ones we're talking to. It's just grammatically
Oh.
weird.
Okay.
It's just a nitpicky English teacher thing of me to say, but grammatically it just drives me crazy.
Complaints by staff are encouraged to be da-da-da.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
got it.
So
Yeah,
that the
that
complaint-
does make sense. It wasn't
Okay.
dumb.
Okay, I thought maybe I was the only one seeing it and maybe I sounded crazy, but it was driving me nuts. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right, so that whole section underneath was, we turned all that into the bullets. See, now you saw, I wasn't sure if we were supposed to be changing everything in yellow when I did this. That's why I have in blue, not sure what this should be. But now that I look at it, I knowing that it was just for a second, take a look at it, that it's probably okay.
The one that you said you're not sure what it should be, to me, it sounds a little bit garbled or disjointed or something not specific enough, maybe. And my thought would be that it be worded something like, when a complaint is likely to rise to the level of board action, a board member should stop the conversation, since continuing may lead to the need for said board member to abstain from such action later, or such later action.
Or should we take the whole thing out, being that we shouldn't be responding to complaints? We should be deferring them to the superintendent.
Well, yeah, this whole section you
Well,
could
we-
take out because we just put it up above.
We shouldn't be responding to them, but I think we can listen to them as long as they're not something that we're going to have to deal with later through board action.
So say again what your suggestion is?
When a complaint is likely to rise to the level of board action, a board member should stop the conversation, since continuing may lead to the need for said board member to abstain from such later action.
I like it.
That's pretty much what we do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Thank you. I like that a lot. Okay, so we'll get rid of what's there and change it to what David just said. Okay. So, all right, so that next part looked okay. I spent a lot of time looking at other board reports on this, board governance handbooks, on what the wording should be. So I pulled from another one. I did not write this. And I liked their wording that the board meetings are held in public, but are not open forum town hall meetings. This way it's clear. I felt just leaving it, it's not a meeting with the public. I thought being that simple could put some community members off, that they think we don't want them. You know, we do want to hear from them, but it's not an open forum town hall meeting. And I'm sure you guys have read the rest. So any input on that section?
The only input I have on that is the highlighted has deliberated, it will be. I think it would sound more correct if it said, when the board is deliberating, is the time for board trustees to listen and learn from each other, rather than has deliberated, it will be a time.
Where are you? I'm a little lost.
Oh,
The very bottom of page 10.
maybe I'm the one that's lost. Under board meeting management,
Uh-huh.
there's a highlighted towards the second half of that paragraph, the word has, and then deliberated, it will be a time. Anyway, to me, that sounds, it doesn't sound right. And replacing the word has deliberated, it will be a time, with the board is deliberating, is the time for trustees to listen and learn from each other, taking public input into consideration without re-engaging the public.
Okay, that's fine. I just, on mine, for some reason, the word has is not highlighted. That's why I was lost.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Agreed. I think so.
Okay.
all right.
Going on to the next page, that second paragraph. I just did not like to allow for a more free-flowing discussion. To me, that told the public that we don't openly discuss in front of them. So at a regular board meeting, that we need to have a special meeting for it. The wording was just, it just didn't read right to me. I thought
Yeah, well,
it gave the wrong impression.
I agree with the concept of allowing a more free-flowing discussion, but I think the changes are appropriate. I had a question. The paragraph above that, part of it's highlighted, and then there's a box alongside that says deleted. That no one was suggesting to delete the latter half of that paragraph. Is that correct?
No, I think I had deleted something and then put it back in. So it's suggesting just deleting the period.
Oh,
So just
okay.
ignore that.
All right. I just wasn't sure, because different editors use different tools to do it, and it was a little bit confusing, at least for my simple mind.
I am not highly skilled in track changes. Okay. Okay, this next one was big for me also. The president may call a short recess at any time. I didn't think we needed a reason. Especially, we don't want to say to calm a potentially contentious issue, because we could need a recess for any reason.
Yeah.
You know?
Agreed.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
I don't think we need to justify at least in the handbook, I don't think we need to justify why we would call a recess.
Right, right.
And I think it's good that it has additionally, any board member may offer a recess motion.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Board member requests for information. It had in here that a copy of material may be made available to each member of the board, and I have a feeling this was probably written before before we did everything electronically. So it can be offered to each member of the board.
If the board members recall, we used to deliver the board packets to people's
I do recall.
post office box or front door or
Manila envelope on my porch on Friday morning. Yeah. So everybody okay with that?
Yep.
All righty. Okay. Request for generation of reports or information. I mean, staff time, it is what it is. And sometimes that's just part of their job. But if it were something that would increase expense to the district, then it should be submitted to the board for consideration. So in David's request for the live streaming stuff, and Heather came back and said, I need to fly to Spain for this. Okay. Sorry, Heather's not going to Spain. But if it's going to add significant, I thought if it was going to add significant expense, that it would have to come to the board for consideration.
Yeah,
Okay.
agreed.
Yeah. I added the word news in that no surprises section because media these days is a lot of different things.
Yeah, and not all of it is news.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this school site visit, I just moved from another section earlier in this part of the handbook because it didn't fit where it was. So I'm really glad we are reviewing the book because not being able to do school site visits before July 15th of 2020, I myself misstepped, and I was contacting principals directly for site visits, forgetting that we had this. So I'm glad this has given me and the rest of the board an opportunity to go through the book as a reminder. I don't even think we've looked at any of this since Ann came on the board, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm very happy to have this opportunity to go over this and say, oh yeah, that's the way we're supposed to do it. Oh yeah, that's exactly what we should say when we hear a complaint. Or Sharon, call Kirk and stop bothering the principals. So, and none of them complained to me. They were so good about it. Okay. And then we had a signature page. We shall renew this agreement as needed. I don't think it needs to be anything specifically periodic. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks.
Fine.
As needed?
As
Yeah.
needed is good.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yes.
Okay, so we just have that one. Stephanie and I will review that board bylaw and see if we can take some of her newer concepts and fit them somewhere else into the book. And then when we're done with that, we'll put it on another agenda for final approval. Does that work for everyone?
Yes.
Sounds
Sure.
good.
Okay, Stephanie, you up for that?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you for your work on this, board. This was great because when it came to the last board meeting, I was like, how on earth are we going to do this? Okay. Moving on to calendar, we have upcoming Thursday, January 21st. There is a DLAC meeting at 6:30. That is a virtual meeting. On Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. Going back to A, there's a typo for anyone that's paying attention. Thursday,
Yeah.
January 21st, 2021 is the DLAC meeting.
Oh,
Wednesday.
Either that or you missed it.
I didn't catch it before now.
it was the best meeting last year.
Yeah. February 3rd is the next governing board meeting at 7 o'clock, a virtual meeting as well. Wednesday, February 10th, the Wellness Committee meeting, 3:30. It's a virtual meeting. Thursday, February 16th, the Education Committee meeting at 6:30 is a virtual meeting. And I took it upon myself to add to this list since it's the day of the next board meeting. There is a Safety Committee meeting at 3:30 on February 17th. Mr. Pombo, is that virtual also? I think all of our meetings are.
Yes, for the time being at least.
Yeah, okay. So in a few minutes, we will be meeting in closed session to consider the following items. Public employee discipline, dismissal, release, and complaint in accordance with Government Code 54957. Student discipline and other confidential matters under Education Code Section 35146, 48900, and 48912B. Pupil personnel, Education Code 48918. And we have 2 students that we will be considering under that section. Conference with labor negotiators under Government Code Section 54957.6. Agency representative is Dr. Nicholas, and that covers the all of the employee organizations in the district. And approval of 2 leaves of absence for certificated employees, employees number 129883 and 130574. Conference with real property negotiators under Government Code 54956.8. I don't think we need to read aloud all of the details under that. So at that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Move
Move
to
to
adjourn
adjourn.
to closed session.
Second,
I have no idea who got
but
that.
I got the second.
Just go alphabetically, say it was trustee Bonilla.
Okay, I like that.
you
Okay,
go.
trustee Bonilla and the second with trustee Clements. Student preferential vote?
Aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned to closed session at 9:11 PM.
Good night, Sunita.
And everyone.
Bye.
Anita?